Greetings and welcome to the Marginally Geeky Show. I'm your host for the evening, Eugene Stevens. Tonight is episode 40, and we are talking about Star Wars Aftermath Life Debt. Tonight I have Jen and Sean. How are y'all doing?
Living the dream.
All right. Yeah.
It is only us again because our fellow Canadian friends didn't get through the first book, so it didn't really make sense that they'd get through the second book either. So I have a feeling it's going to be us three on the next episode as well when we finish up this series, which is fine, which is great, actually. So let's go ahead and just get right into it. This is book 2 in the Aftermath series by Chuck Wendig. It takes place immediately after the second Death Star. Well, the first book takes place immediately after the second Death Star explodes, and this is the continuation of the stories of some of our old school heroes. A lot more of our old school heroes kind of really show up in this one, and it's the continuation of the heroes that we got and the bad guys that we got in the previous book. So just kind of a brief overview. Did you enjoy the book, Jen?
Yeah, I liked it, and I felt like it was less. There still was some of it, but it was less jumpy and, overwhelming, like with new people than the last book. I think that was one of my critiques, was like, oh my God, I can't keep up with who this new person is and what this storyline is. There was still some of that, but not nearly as much. So it was easier to follow, I think. And we got to see more Leia.
Yes, we get to see a lot more Leia. Sean, what were your overall thoughts?
Yeah, it didn't jump around quite as much as the first book. It was easier to follow. It felt long though. There was a lot to this. You could have broken this one up into like smaller books. So that was the one thing. I was like, holy crap, they're still going. Yeah. I'm not saying it was bad. It was a good story, but
yeah, time-wise, this was almost 16 hours to listen to. So.
Yeah, well, maybe that was why.
Yeah, it was definitely a longer book. It was definitely longer than the first one. So, I enjoyed it as well. I actually enjoyed this one, I think, more than the first book, mainly because, well, like you brought up, Jen, and actually both of you, the fact it doesn't jump around as much, and when it does, I know to expect it now. Whereas with the first book, it was like, okay, let's do an interlude, and we're going to talk about something completely off the top, kind of off topic or whatever. And you don't never know if you're going anywhere with those. So whenever it happens on, this time, it's like, okay, this might be something big, this might be something small, whatever. But it definitely seemed more linear, and I think it also helps the fact that we now know who the core team is from the first one. That was one of the big things from the core team, like. John Burrell doesn't show up until late in the first book, and he's one of the core team members. Yeah. So it's one of those things that's like, well, am I supposed to care about this guy? Is he actually going to hang around? And we know who the core team is, so we know when we bring up Sinjir and Snap, and it just we're like, okay, I know who it is, I know where I'm going, but let's keep moving with that. So. So like I said, this does pick up with the from the end of the other book. The Empire is basically crumbling. Grand Admiral Sloane is doing her best to try to build an empire, but she's kind of she's realizing now that oh geez, we talked about this right before the show. What was his name again, Jen?
Gallius Rax.
Yes. Rax. That he's basically the mastermind. He's the puppet master, and she's coming to realize this. She's not just going to lay down and take it, but she's also kind of like she's also in a position where she's like, okay, well, I kind of have to go along with this, and let's see where it's going. And there are moments where she feels like, well, maybe this isn't such a bad thing. Maybe this will work out. Maybe this is for the best. And then, just immediately, shit hits the fan. So our group ends up, they're after, the book starts off, they're after, they're going after a former, member of the Empire, and they're trying to get him. And it's kind of funny because we have the same situation. They're in these hanging these hanging cells or whatever, like they were in the first book. I was like, that's kind of odd they reused that, but whatever. So they get out of there. They're going back. They're bringing him, back to justice, whatever. He ends up dying. And in the process, we end up finding out, Leia's has found out that Chewie's missing. Chewie's been missing since the first book. And Han is just out gallivanting around. I say that. He's looking for Chewie. And then Han goes missing. So she gets the little group that we have and tells them, hey, I need y'all to go find Han and bring him back. And that's kind of what the real focus of the book is. Anything in particular that kind of stood out that you really enjoyed?
Well, one thing that really bothered me was not reading a lot of Star Wars and stuff like that, watching the movies and all that, but how poorly the New Republic was treating Kashyyyk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
they really make a very good point of pointing that out, how the New Republic wasn't going to help Kashyyyk because they didn't care. There's more people, other people we have to help with. They'll have to fend for themselves.
Well, especially when we find out there's at least one prison on that planet, you would think for no other reason than to free those prisoners, the Republic would be interested. Not only that, but obviously it's the right thing to do. This is a sentient, species that's been kind of enslaved, and it was just an awful situation, and it kind of lent to a little bit of speciesism or whatever you want to call it, which was very prevalent in the Empire, but you expect more from the Republic.
Yeah.
Well, one thing, and I think this book does an even better job than the first one of painting the galaxy as being, just because, the Empire is, was defeated, essentially, the war was definitely not over. We still have lots of battles going on. And it wasn't just like it said, it wasn't, whereas, when the Emperor stepped in, he was basically just, casting aside the old Republic, and now he's the head, and everything's in place. They already have, supply lines set up. The army's already set up, everything is ready to go. Whereas this is literally building a new Republic from the ground up, and it's not easy, and it's ugly, and there's a lot of crap going on to deal with.
Well, and what really struck me was you had kind of these factions within the New Republic where Mon Mothma was kind of we need to, move to peace and demilitarize. And she wanted to do this all really quickly after, winning against the Death Star and killing the Emperor. But there were still so many planets under Imperial control and so many people, kind of being enslaved by them. It seemed kind of counter to what they did all the fighting up to that point for. Why would you defeat the Emperor and all this other stuff and then turn around and just say, nope, we're not gonna ramp up our military and free these people? It just seemed like they were working against each other, and then their whole naivety going into that big celebration with the peace talks was just kind of silly to me. Yeah.
So, so the interludes, there were a couple that really stood out to me. Number one, I love the fact, we have this thing going back to back on Tatooine, and we have this little interlude, this little side story of the Beastmaster from Empire, or from Jedi, that runs in crying. It's just
poor guy had a rough go of it after.
Yeah, because I'll never forget that scene. Watching it as a kid, I'm just this big, overweight, guy. Looks like he's he's part of Jabba's group. He's got to be a bad guy, and he's crying because the giant monster died. What's going on here? That kind of broke my brain as a kid. And then you have this part where he's just he gets attacked, and he's almost just go ahead and end it. I don't have a reason to live anymore.
Yeah.
And then he gets hope.
It was kind of cool to find out what happened to the Sarlacc after
yes
all that speculation and did Boba Fett get out? Because you're You know, if all that stuff happened to it and it was like dying from the inside, it's very plausible now, you know, to think,
Well,
try to figure out what happened.
supposedly we're going now. It could be a flashback scene, so we don't know this for certain. But supposedly we're going to get Boba Fett in the second season of The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
So, you know, which also takes place after all that stuff. So it's like, okay, well, surely he did survive. But yeah, when it was specifically bringing up the fact that it wasn't just that, you know, part of Jabba's barge fell onto the Sarlacc and was hurting it. It was like, no, it was ripped up from the inside. And I'm like, yeah, he lived. He.
Yeah, there's no way. I mean, he wasn't in there too long, and then he's like, yeah, the Jawas are, you know, harvesting parts out of part of its
Yeah.
belly, and I'm like, how big is this fucking thing?
Oh, it's got to be huge.
Yeah.
The other interlude that really kind of got me was the one with the reporter and her cameraman, and when the cameraman gets killed, that was that was very gritty. If you remember in Solo, the scene where he's in the battlefront when he first meets, you know, some of the other characters or whatever, like that's like the gritty war stuff that we didn't get to see a lot of, you know, especially in the movies. And you know, these TIE pilots are literally just like, you know, suicide bombing this city. It's just crazy.
They have ejector seats.
That's very true. They do have ejector seats. So, but yeah, like that's the only weapon you have left is to just, you know, fly your ship into a building and just hope for the best. So,
and then the scene on Ryloth where you saw the opposite, where they had just abandoned post. The Imperials kind of just gave up, and it was interesting, like how different it was in different parts of the galaxy and how everyone reacted, you know, in their own way. Like some people dug in and tried to keep power, and some people were like, what are we still doing here, you know, and like walked away from the Empire.
And honestly, I mean, I could see how that would happen. Like, you know, because you are going to have those hardcore people that are like, well, I don't have anything else to do, and just keep on keeping on. And then you're going to have other people who will be like, well, this was fun. Let's go do something else now. So.
And we know that there were deserters based on, you know, episodes 7, 8, 9, where we learn a little more about those stories, which is something we'd never been introduced to before, you know, the newer movies and books. So that was an interesting, Yeah,
and then we also have that one scene with Maz, where we get introduced to her, and I like that introduction. I love that it gives us a lot more backstory, because going back and you know, I've rewatched the movie since I read the series, and seeing her palace and everything is just, it's totally different now, because you're like, wow, yeah, there are all those different flags, and you know, it's just like, I thought, because at first you're like, were they just kind of banners or whatever? But the fact that they're literally flags from all these different places throughout time is like, no, it's literally like she said, you know, everyone's welcome as long as you don't fight. And if you fight, you done fucked up. So
yeah, I kind of thought we might like she would have a bigger part in this one after we first met her, and maybe this is where she meets Han, and you know, she shows up to help them. But you know, maybe we'll get more of that in the third book.
So. Sorry, I'm eating ice. I thought you were going to go on a little bit more. So
your fault, Jen.
Yes, it's your fault. No. So anyway, the big thing is they send the group goes off. Once again, I love the I love how this group interacts with each other. You know, you have, you know, you got her, she's the mom. She's basically like, you know, Norra is you know, kind of like the mom figure or whatever that everyone follows. The bounty hunter is just kind of like, well, you know, listen, I do what I want to do, but you know, you get this sense that, you know, and she does say it, you know, at near the very end, you know, they're asking, well, why are you wanting to do this? Why are you wanting to go on this stupid mission? You didn't even ask about money. And she's just like, I'd like to do something I'd like to do good to do good. Just for that reason. And you know, so you get that, but you also get it from what is his name? The ex-Imperial. Sinjir. Yeah, I still love Sinjir. I love how he's just
great.
You know, I'm sober. This is not good. I need something to drink to get me through this. Mr. Bones continues to be
Oh
freaking
my
awesome.
God. He
I'm
was
with you.
great.
I'm with you, Jen. If you really think about it, the droids are some of the best characters in all of everything.
hmm
But
And
so,
his like trying to be more human and
oh yeah, the
hugging
fact,
people and saying things. It's just like hilarious that he's like creeping everyone out even more because he's trying so hard.
You have to listen to the audio version of him too. It is so well done.
it is very well done.
Yeah, when I read it, I'm hearing it in the droid voice, but
It's
yeah,
it,
when
it's close to that, but it is a little different. It's kind of, yeah, it's interesting. And like you said, the way
inflections are all in the wrong places,
oh yes,
and it makes it so good. And just the way he's so giddy about talking about like eviscerating people and stuff
yeah.
like that.
oh yeah,
Funny.
I will amass violence against everyone.
Yeah.
I'm excited. And then, like when he goes to hug what's his name? Snap and his dad. It's like
Yes.
so awkward. It's great.
So Leia sends the group out. They end up finding Han, and they find this. I liked the idea of how the not camp, the prison on Kashyyyk worked. The fact that it was like it used gravity. Basically, it was creating its own gravity well that you couldn't technically get out of unless you had figured out a way around it. But so they go to this prison, and they break out a bunch of people, to include Chewbacca. They end up finding Chewbacca, of course. That's the main reason they went there. But then Norra finds her husband that she's been missing for years and years and years. In fact, it was the reason she left Snap in the first place, was to go find her husband.
I had a feeling that was going to happen when they broke all these people out, and I was like, this would happen right after she like starts getting interested in Wedge. I felt so bad for Wedge after all that, because
poor Wedge.
He's our
and
OG.
it's one of those things, like, and something's going to happen. Something's going to happen, because whenever all the information gets back around to Sloane, and then what's it? I'm blanking out his name again.
Rax.
Yeah, he's like, no, let him go. And she's like, what do you mean let him go? Just let him go. It's fine. Everything is working out to the way that it's supposed to be. It's like, okay, then some other
what is
shit's
his plan?
going on.
Oh,
exactly.
Yeah, because he led them there. He basically like laid the trap for them. He knew what they wanted, and he even sent one of his star ships in to get destroyed to make it look like they were putting up a resistance. It was just really weird how everything was so planned out, but that's always how it is.
Mm-hmm.
As like a surprise ending goes, this wasn't a surprise at all for this book. Like, you knew, like, I'm really skipping far ahead here, but you knew what those prisoners were.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
they were hooked up, their brains were being
reprogrammed. You'd have to be a drug chimp not to figure this one out.
Yeah.
It was,
but the Republic didn't.
Even
no, they didn't.
It
I didn't know exactly what was going to happen, but I knew something bad was going to happen. Like, I was like, but like you said, it was like I didn't have it exactly figured out. But as soon as, and what we're talking about is, if you're listening to this, what we're talking about is,
spoiler alert.
Yeah, spoiler alert. So once they break out all these prisoners, and they bring them back to where they currently have the current capital of the New Republic is, they decide they're going to have this. They're going to have an Independence Day, and they have a big, they have a huge celebration. And right as Mon Mothma is talking about this, they have all these prisoners there. They all instantly turn and just start firing upon people in the stands. They fire at Mon Mothma. In fact, Nora's husband is going to assassinate Mon Mothma, and she stops it barely, just in the nick of time. But she also knew something. The other giveaway with that, of course, was what is his name?
Brenton.
So when he basically knocks out Snap, it's like, oh, okay, this is not right. What the hell's going on with this? And it really does give away what's going to go on. You know something's happened there.
Well, and
Well, even
everybody
before
was
that,
just, yeah, I was gonna say
like
everyone
the
was just
blacked out
weird.
time, like him going for walks and like not being able to have the relationship with Nora, and like there were so many clues to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It almost was too much.
Yeah, everyone that came back was like not themselves and having trouble adjusting, and that's to be expected. But yeah, to the extent that they were and how much they were gone, it seemed kind of like someone would have picked up on that.
And what kind of bothered me was the way Temmin was acting during
Like
all
a
this,
brat
like
again.
being Nora for how Brenton was acting. I don't know if that was like, I don't know, that's a typical kid thing or something like that because of his age, but
He's
I don't
a
know.
brat.
It bothered me. I don't know why it did. It's like every time he went into it, I'm like, seriously, kid, grow the fuck up.
Yeah,
Like you're
no
flying
joke.
starships around and stuff like that, and you've killed people, and it's like, and you're having a problem with this?
Yeah.
Yeah. It did kind of bother me as well. Snap just, I don't know. He kind of, I don't want to say he's bipolar, but he definitely kind of, flings back and forth. But then again, we are supposed to keep in mind he is he's a teenager and, he's kind of had a rough life. So it's kind of like, well, I can kind of see
Get
it a
ready,
little
Sean.
bit, so.
I've
And then
already
you got coming up
I've
on
got
teenage
two
years.
teenagers. Two of them right now, so I'm lucky.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they also,
Maybe that's why it bothers you so much. This could happen at any minute.
Well, the other thing that happens that is kind of the big deal is when all this is happening on Liberation Day, on their Independence Day, as soon as this starts going down, Sloane was under the impression that, hey, while this is going on, the Empire's going to show up and they're going to like destroy everything and they're going to show you, you pathetic your pathetic new little republic, that it's nothing, that it's crap. And when all this starts going down, she's just like, you son of a bitch. Like, yeah. So, and the fact that her right-hand man turns against her, that's what really makes her snap, though, is when she's like, you don't have to do this. And she goes, no, he's the way. And that's the breaking point for her, is the fact that
he seduced her. He totally was working that from the other angle. And I was like, okay, so this guy has a little bit of game too on top of everything. He had because he's only in his 40s, if you 40s or
correct?
Yeah, because it was 30 years before that he was found.
Okay, yeah.
And he was like a teen. He wasn't quite a teenager. He was still young. So yeah, he would have been around. He'd be somewhere around the 40 mark.
At first I was grossed out, and then I was like, wait, he's actually kind of young, so maybe this makes sense, and he might actually be good looking and charming. And
he's younger than I am. Oh, not hurt.
Ooh, awkward.
Yeah.
So anyways, back to Kashyyyk and.
But yeah, so that at that point she's just like, okay, well this is bullshit, and then it's literally her quote unquote final test is that, she's like, this is the way, this is how we have to go, and she's like, no, this is not how the Empire is going to work. We're not going to sneak around. We're not going to do all this, cloak and dagger bullshit. We are the Empire. We're going to do things the way the old way. And this is kind of, and this was a big thing in the previous book, was talking about what is the Empire going forward? Are we going to stick to the old ways, or are we going to, are we going to have to change? And, you've got, half basically saying, we need to change, we need to do different things. And then the other half's like, no, we need to, stay true to our core beliefs. And this is the breaking point right here. And it's obvious that the new way won out because, on the way out, she gets shot and, you think she's maybe dead. But then Brennan teams up with her.
They never die.
And then they go off and actually the third book is a lot of their adventure together. We'll talk about, odd bedfellows. I mean, he blames her and she's like, no, I'm not the person you need to go after. In fact, the same person you want to go after is the same person I'm going after.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So can I just say, because we kind of know this is all going to happen based on like Rax and Sloane's conversations, and then the prison break and the weird stuff happening. We know something's going to happen, right? But then like one by one, you see our big heroes that end up in the last 3 movies not at the scene. So you're like, okay, so they've developed this clever like not side story, but like way to get them out of there. So we've got Leia and Akbar and Wedge and a few others who just happen to not be there conveniently when all of this goes down for a good reason. But it was just interesting that like, in Star Wars land, there's always something convincing, but also like way too coincidental to make the story work.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. So they after they bust out Chewie and a bunch of other people, part of the group decides to stay behind, and they're just like, we're going to liberate, if the New Republic's not going to show up to help us out, we're going to liberate Kashyyyk ourselves. And they got like half the planet liberated. Like they were doing a damn good job. And then just, things, cobbled around them. And it's at that point is when Leia shows up with cavalry, and they, crush what's left of the Empire there. And then fully free the planet. And so it's at this point we have, this scene that's like, well, what are we going to do from here? And, once they find out about what happened, back at the New Republic, of course, Leia's like, I have to go back. And Han has to make the decision. Is he going to stay on Kashyyyk and help Chewie, or is he going to, go back and be with Leia and be with his family? And of course he chooses that. And of course Chewie's like, well, then I'm coming with you. And he's like, no, you have to stay here and do your own thing. And, I love
teared up during that scene because that was hard for both of them, and
I love the fact that the way they portray Leia, even though she is his husband, Han's husband, Han's wife, and she's pregnant, and it's their family. She's like, but that's Chewie. Like splitting those two up, like you don't do that. And it was hard on her to. She didn't really even ask it. She's just like, I'm going back. And he's like, well, then I'm going to go with you. He didn't even, I don't think she even asked him. He just said, I'm going back with you. And I'm just, I'll see you again, Chewie. But it's just, that was a hard scene. So.
Yeah. Can I also just say, going back to what Sean said about how poorly they treated that planet and just kind of blew it off. And then they turned around and celebrated the release of those prisoners and kind of like took it as a New Republic victory. That really pissed me off that they did nothing to help officially. And then they were like, oh, all these war heroes have returned and Liberation Day. That was bullshit. Like, and then they didn't stick around to help with the rest of it either. It was just like, okay, well, good job. Thanks for doing that. And we're going to, just ignore the rest of the planet.
Yeah. Yeah, that was because it said, Leia basically was like, well, I'm kind of giving up everything to go do this, but this is what I've got to do. And then Wedge was like, yep, whatever. If this is the last time I fly, this is the last time I fly. And of course I love the fact that Akbar was just like, nope, this is what I'm doing. So
yeah,
y'all can do whatever y'all want when I come back. But of course, the nice thing about that is showing them celebrating. It's like, well, then you can't really discipline them too much, because if you're gonna show, put them on your shoulders and show them as heroes, you also can't really turn around and be like, all right, well, you're dismissed. So,
all the pilots and all that were a bunch of rejects anyway, were they not? They were the ones that were.
Oh yeah, Phantom Squadron was all reject stuff. So. But
which you would think they would take anyone they could get, considering how strapped they were for people and resources. But
exactly,
that's just me.
What did you think? What did you think at the very end? We get that other flashback of Rax's, where he meets with Sheev Palpatine. I'm like,
That
okay,
was weird.
Sheev's an interesting first name. That's fine.
We
I
knew
thought
that about him, though, didn't
Yeah,
we?
I'm
Did
pretty
we?
sure we did.
Okay.
Yeah, like
I
back when he was an emperor, but he just went by Palpatine. Or I'm sorry, a senator even.
Senator, I'm pretty sure it was in Phantom Menace and all that.
See, I thought for sure he would have said just like, just call me, Sidious, or call me, something like that. So
I was surprised that he sent the kid back after all that talk about a new life, and then he's like, but you got to go back and watch these, this dust collect or whatever. But it was interesting to kind of see the origins of Jakku and its significance, which we still don't quite know yet. But I think at this point, like, we don't know that the Emperor had a kid, right? Like, we don't really find that out until episode 9. So I'm kind of looking for clues of that. Like, why would this kid go back to Jakku knowing that, like, it was kind of a hot spot for all the stuff happening? And then, there's a lot of questions coming up because of that.
Well, I mean, he did tell him you have a choice. You can either go back and watch over my stuff, or I'm going to kill you right now.
I'm talking about the Emperor's kid.
Oh, the Emperor's kid. Yeah,
like when he goes back to Jakku to hide, but he goes back to the planet where, all this shit's going down. And why does everybody keep going back to Jakku?
Because
like,
we keep going back to Tatooine. Every time you turn around, we're back at fucking Tatooine.
But that's what Finn says. Everybody wants to go back to this planet. I just want to get out of here.
Something about those sand planets, man.
Yeah. I have a shirt that says that. Got to get back to Jakku. And
nice.
I wore it when I met Bill Nye a few years ago, and he was looking at it, and he was like, what does that say? I feel like he was impressed. I'm just saying.
Nice.
I'm going with that.
Was there anything else y'all wanted to throw out there? I know we're kind of condensed. There's just so much stuff in this book. It's hard to, number one, it's hard to remember everything, and I don't want to go blow by blow on it either.
I just want to say I'm getting a little sick of how emotionally stunted these characters are. Like, all of them are afraid to have intimate, like, mature feelings, right? Jas and Jom get together, but they're, she's too proud to admit that she has feelings for him, and she kind of breaks his heart. And then even like when he, basically abandons his post to come help. And then Sinjir meets someone, and he kind of does the same thing. He's like, well, I can't have attachments. That's weakness, and they'll use that against me. And I'm just like, you guys are fucking stupid. Like, stop ruining your lives and ruining your chance at happiness with this. But they're also like, like I said, they've got so much baggage and shit they can't work through. And it's like, it just pisses me off. I'm taking a lot of this personal, okay? I don't like seeing potential love matches go to waste.
There was a good coupling in there, Adea and Rax.
Oh, God. I thought you were going to say Wedge and Norra. And I was like,
No. It's all about Rax and Adea.
Yeah, I mean, we only got to see one little scene of that, but...
Oh, it was enough.
Your imagination worked overtime.
Exactly. That's what I have it for.
But yeah, anyways, like, that just annoyed me.
I'm like you. I understand that, but I've also... And see, when I look at that, I want to say, yeah, but... And then I think about people I know in real life, and I'm like, no, I know people like that. And
I get it. Like, they've had fucked up lives, and they've gone through some shit. But you would think that would be more reason for them to be like, wow, this person really makes me happy and helps, like, appease those negative feelings I've had my whole life. But at least we get, like, Han and Leia, who, we never thought he would settle down and be kind of the devoted type, and so far they're working out. At least we know that things happen later, but
yeah,
it's good to see them happy.
And of course we keep hearing about Luke, but at this, there's no hide nor hair.
Yeah, where the fuck is Luke? That pissed me off.
Luke's just like, and I'll be honest with you, I'll go ahead and tell you this about the third book, you still don't see him. So,
I mean, Leia refers to him a lot and is like, could really use your help right now, Luke. But we know he eventually comes back. It's just annoying that he also just kind of runs off and hides and abandons everyone when all this shit's going down.
Well, apparently this is the time when him and
The guy that went to search for the thing.
yes, like this is that
The
time
Admiral.
when he's out trying to find the holocron, and he's doing all of that stuff before he comes back and starts. All right, well, I guess I should start retraining Jedi. So
Yeah.
this is probably also the time when he actually finds the original Jedi Temple to start getting some of that information to bring back and start working on it. But yeah, we don't get any of that. And I wonder, I bet there's a book series. I bet if there isn't already one, I bet there's going to be one, because I mean they're really kind of trying to fill in and pad everything to be a very solid interconnected story, which I'm okay with. I like getting this extra stuff. Going forward though,
it's going to be a Disney TV series.
No, because then they'd have to, unless they do an animated version, which that would be fine with that, because I mean it's not like Mark Hamill doesn't do a really good voice work. So I really wouldn't mind saying
it worked for Han Solo.
Can you guys imagine having to watch a show though, or read a comic book series or whatever, and watching Ben growing up and just knowing what happens? That just seems like it'd be a little heartbreaking to have to witness that. We did with Anakin. We did with Anakin, yeah, but it was it was already hard enough with him, and now
like we do with the Clone Wars. Oh geez, seven seasons of watching. Man, these clone troopers actually have personalities, and they're really devoted to the Republic, to the point that some of them, flat out was like, I am not following, did everything they possibly could to not follow Order 66, and then hate the Empire afterwards in Rebels, because they're like, no, I was devoted to the Empire, or to the Republic. The Republic, was for the people. That's what I was taught as a child, whenever I was being cloned and stuff like that. And the Empire is not that. And they, that was one of the things I really liked about Rebels, is they hated the Empire. That what few clones survived hated the Empire, because they were like, this is not what we were. This is not what we were born.
We were brainwashed, yeah.
So, but yeah. Well, all right. I guess let's go ahead and wrap this one up. We do have one more book in the series. The next one we'll be reading for next month is Aftermath, Empire's End. And this is, I will tell you, we do start getting more information that leads into that better fills in for episode 9, because we start hearing a lot more stuff. We did hear it in the end of this book as well, with them talking about how the outer rim is where we're going to, have the resurgence of the Empire. So we start getting more of that ideology that if we're going to rebuild, we've got to go way far out away from everything, and then come back in, like a thunderstorm.
I have one more thing, and I'm sure this becomes more apparent in the next book, but Rax obviously is someone of great importance. He's very secretive, nobody really knows who he is, where he came from, but you can really see, now that you've seen the 7, 8, and 9, you can really see the Emperor's fingerprints on a lot of this with him. He had to have known this whole time the Emperor was still alive. He was obviously his puppet or whatever. So I'm interested in seeing how that plays out, because
we know that information.
Yeah, we know that he's behind the scenes, but then we don't really know he's still alive until episode 9, right? So
yeah, this is he's like Plan J.
Yeah.
The Emperor
and it's
has
crazy that the Emperor was able to think that far and prepare for all these things at once. He had so many people in play, and you never knew from the movies. And yeah,
because in the movies you just knew that he was in charge of everything, and that Vader was his enforcer, and that was about it. But then you see him meeting with he met with his council in was it Empire or was it Jedi? And when Vader shows up, the rest of the council walks off. Vader, if you go back and rewatch that scene, it becomes very apparent that Vader was not part of his high council. He was his enforcer, but he was not, privileged to a bunch of that other stuff, which is why Vader kept going, well, then fuck you. I'm going to go get my boy and we're going to take you out. So, but yeah, all the different plans and stuff going on. Like I said, this, just kind of jokingly, he was part of Rax is like Plan J.
Yeah, he's
So-
got. I mean, there's other books and stories about other people that he was training on the sly, and getting like not just training like this like Rax, but like dark side stuff. And he had apprentices, and anyways, it's just interesting that his mind can work that many ways.
I very much think of it as more so because it's being fiction, they can extend it, but very much so how Hitler was doing things. It was always because you find out, okay, he had all these plans for all these different fronts and everything, but then it was like, all right, well then we're gonna dedicate a group to finding science and trying to find this ultimate weapon, being a nuclear bomb. But like he was investigating like occult shit, and just like if there was a weapon or way he could find to get around it, like he was reaching for it. And I very much kind of feel they're basing the Emperor on that type of ideology of,
oh yeah,
let's throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. And
well, Star Wars was very much based on World War II. I mean,
yeah.
George Lucas was, he called Vader
exactly.
So, but what was I gonna say? Oh, the other thing that is striking to me is like he had the foresight to be like developing manufacturing plants or whatever on the far, far, far reaches of the galaxy, so far away that like news of that didn't even get back to anybody in the the core systems. And that, to me, that's just amazing, because as much technology as they have and as much back and forth as people, supposedly they can just be anywhere in the galaxy instantly, because that's realistic science. Like, I just find it really hard to believe that like nobody had an inkling that any of this shit was going on entire planets. Like, I don't know.
Yep.
Star Wars magic.
Yep. So like I said, so next month we'll be reading the third and final book in the Aftermath trilogy. It's called Empire's End, and then we'll wrap this series up, and we'll figure out what we're going to do next after this. So I think we have our book decided after that. So, but we didn't really call a vote, so I'm not gonna quite announce that one yet. So, let's go ahead and move on to what else you're reading. Are you reading anything else, Jen? Have you time to read anything else?
I did finish. Well, no, I didn't finish, but I've been listening to The Omnivore's Dilemma for another book club for the Planeteers. So it's by Michael Pollan. It's a book about food, and it's an environmental, like where our food comes from, why we eat what we eat as omnivores, and kind of why our food system in America is the way it is, and how we came to be like subsidizing corn, and just the way we raise our animals and livestock, and industrial food. It's kind of eye-opening and depressing at the same time, but there's also some hopeful stories about folks who are kind of doing some different things to change that. And yeah, so if you want to learn about that, that's pretty interesting. But yeah, The Omnivore's Dilemma. That's
Good
it.
deal. Sean, have you been reading anything else?
Yeah, some far less educational but more entertaining things. I finished off the 2 Bruce Campbell books.
Okay, are they about his? Are they?
Yep.
Are they fiction or nonfiction?
Nope. Nonfiction. So
okay.
The first one is If Chins Could Kill, Confessions of a B-movie Actor, and it takes place basically from a kid up until like 2002, something like that, just around the Spider-Man movie, something like that.
Okay.
And then he writes another one, Hail to the Chin, and it's just a continuation and all that, and it goes into like not only like his life, but like what he's starred in, and like Burn Notice and remakes of The Evil Dead and Ash. Like I think he's probably gonna put one of these out like every decade or so now. They're really entertaining. I listen to the audio versions of them, so it's him reading them.
Oh, he's reading them?
Oh yeah, he's reading them.
Oh,
I would expect. Yeah.
That sounds fantastic then.
And It's another couple books that I would have no problem just listening to over and over and over again. I even looked up like Burn Notice to like purchase the whole series. I've never even seen Burn Notice before, but like he's in them, and I'm like,
Yes.
I really like even when he's
I've
talking
never seen
about like Xena and Hercules and stuff like that, and because he was in them and he like directed some, and
I didn't
yeah,
realize
it's
that. I never really
really
got into those
interesting.
shows. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I remember seeing him when I was a kid watching like Hercules and Xena and
Uh-huh.
stuff like that. I remember him being in them. So no, excellent books. And right now I'm reading the fourth book in the Not Alone series, Fractured Union. Highly recommend the series. I think I've talked about it before.
You have?
The first one could have been a standalone book, but he's done a really good job of continuing the story. Now, the first one was, you could believe that it could happen in today's world. Like, right up until pretty close to the end, it's like everything is like, holy crap, this could happen. But now we're more into like the science fiction aspect of it, which is, it's still good reads. So yeah, I'm about halfway through that fourth novel right now. So yeah, Not Alone series by Craig Falconer.
Good deal. Yeah, you talked about them before. They're still on my to-do list. I actually have just finished something else that you recommended. The Trader's Tales books. There's a continuation that we were talking about before the show, but there's 6 books in that series, and I literally waited a month, held on to some credits, read the first 4, and then I was like, all right, I'll just wait. I've only got a couple weeks left, and finally broke down and told my wife, all right, listen, I'm buying a couple more credits. I got to finish the series. So I think at some point I might recommend it, that we could recommend it for the show. But it's 6 books, so I mean that's half of the year, unless we wanted to do multiple books at a whack, and I don't know if we could quite do that, but it's a lot of reading for some people.
How long are they?
They
to listen
vary.
Yeah, they do vary. Actually, the first several books I thought were a little on the short side, and the last 2 or 3 books are like double the length. Like there's a lot to get in those last couple of books.
Yeah, the first ones are only about 7 to 8 hours, and then by the end they're like, I think they're 12, 13, something like that.
Oh, I thought they were.
No, owner share is 17 hours.
Yeah, 17 hours.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I enjoyed the book. They're definitely, at no point are they super like nail biter or anything like that. They're very, I don't want to say calm, because there is stuff that happens in them, but they're just, you just fall in love with the main character Ishmael, and like he never wavers. He's always a good guy, and you fall in love with the guy, and you want to see him win, and sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't. So but yeah, I really enjoyed the series. In fact, I go back to work next week. I've got 6 10-hour days ahead of me. So I may be going back through them again, like, because that's when I tend to go back through and re-listen to some stuff. So I've already recently redone the Bobaverse and the Magic books, and I think this may be a good one to go back through. So
yeah, actually, I was just reading. So that series that takes place after Trader Tales I was telling you about, it's like a 3-book series. But there's a character you meet in that series that I'm just reading. Nathan Lowell started another series based on one of those characters. So I just happened to find it. And I'm going to hold off right now, I think. But
gotcha.
I really like Nathan Lowell. I think he writes, for a science fiction author, he writes really down to earth human stories. So, and I always enjoy those.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed it. And the narrator they have for the audiobook version is really good too. So
if you can find the original podcast with Nathan Lowell, the writer, because he narrates the first version of it, and that's what I spent years listening to that. So it was hard going to a different narrator.
I can understand that.
What series? The Martian. I haven't listened to The Martian with Will Wheaton.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, does he narrate that?
They
The
redid it.
second time round.
Yeah, they redid it, and he narrated. I still have the original version, and he's a good narrator. I like the stuff that I've listened to where he narrates, but I don't know if for me. I don't think he's the right voice for that, because I fell in love the first time I listened to The Martian, and I like that version. So
there was quite a difference between the narration for the Trader Tale series with Nathan Lowell as opposed to, I can't remember the name of the new narrator, and he did a great job, but like even Cookie was the biggest one from the first couple books in the Trader Tale series. Mm-hmm. Nathan Lowell had a very distinct voice for that character, and it's completely changed, and it kind of changes the tone of the book a little bit too.
Oh, okay.
It's still good, but it's
different.
It's different. I don't like change.
I understand. I understand, because if you go back and you listen to the Bobaverse books, I don't know, when was the last time y'all have gone back and re-listened to the Bobaverse books?
It's been a while, but I've heard that they've changed.
They re-recorded it, and it's still what's his name? It's still the same narrator, but the beats are different. It like, especially like when Bob is first learning to talk, it's definitely, you can definitely understand what he's saying better, mm-hmm. but it's different. It just sounds different from the first time I heard it, and to me, I'm just like, I kind of liked it better the first way. So
in the like fan groups on Facebook that I think Jen and I are both part of for Bobaverse, that seemed to be a common complaint going through the boards, that they didn't. People are like, did they change this? Like, I just re-listened to it, and people aren't really liking it.
Yep.
But those are the ones that have listened to it like 4 or 5 times already. That could pick that up. If you've only listened to it once, you probably would never have picked it up.
And you can tell, like, the cadence is a little different, because all 3 of those books sounded, the first time I listened to them, they all sounded very much alike. And you can definitely tell the cadence is a little different between books 1 and then 2 and 3 flow, because they didn't re-record those 2. So if you go back and re-listen to them, you'll notice it. You'll notice the first book sounds a little different, and then the other 2 sound like you remember them too. So that's interesting. We probably should just do an episode talking about that. Just, things that we like or dislike about the audiobook experience. So
the narrator makes or breaks it, man.
Yeah, because some of Stephen King's books he narrates, and he does a good job at, and some of them I'm like, yeah, maybe you should have got someone.
Can you keep trying to get Luke Daniel on the show?
Yes, I'd love to. I'd love to get him on here and talk.
I keep spamming his Facebook post and being like, we'd love to have you, but he probably just thinks I'm creepy at this point. So, Luke, if you're listening.
So
it's funny. The book I'm listening to, Michael Pollan's book. I keep having to recheck the name of the narrator because it sounds very similar to Luke Daniel, and I'm like, it's not him, but the inflection in a lot of the things, and I'm listening a little faster too, so it's kind of like some of the stuff sound. Yeah, shut up. Yeah. Some of the stuff sounds similar, so it's just weird. Like,
what speed are you listening to, Jen?
Just like 1.3 or 1.5. I can't do double speed. My brain can't keep up with that.
And but it makes it easier to get through it.
Yeah.
And it's just
I've even been listening to some of my podcasts at 1.5 just because sometimes there's so many I want to hear. Mm-hmm. And it gets weird when I slow it down. It's like, do they really talk that slow? Do I talk that slow in real life?
No, you don't. But yes, especially listening to audiobooks, because okay, so my mom constantly listens to everything on speaker on her phone, and we'll go over there and she'll be like, do you mind if I listen to one of my audiobooks? We're like, yeah, that's fine, because we might be doing other things. And listening to her book when it's recorded and they talk like this, which is a perfectly fine way to read a book, but I'm so used to double speed. I'm just like, oh my God, she's been talking for 5 minutes and haven't finished the sentence. Or at least that's the way it seems. So.
Yeah.
But yeah. Well, let's go ahead and wrap up this episode. Jen, where can we find you online?
You can find me here on. This is Marginally Geeky on Sustainably Geeky. Like almost said that.
They all blur.
Which is the environmental one that I host. We just did a show about seed saving and gardening, which was pretty cool. On the parent show, Epically Geeky, and then Creatively Geeky, where we talk about creative things.
Yay.
And then on the social medias, at Het's Gonna Be Me.
Sean, where can we find you online?
I don't know. You tell me. What am I on now?
It's not.
He's on almost all the shows. Go look for him. Go look for him at Epically Geeky. You'll find him.
Yeah,
there.
I'm around.
Yeah.
It's around.
Oh yeah.
And then you can find us at Epically Geeky on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can find all the shows on epicallygeeky.com. And then, if you would, please give us a 5-star on iTunes, Google Music, Google Play, wherever you find podcasts, you can pretty much find us there. So, and as always, if you want to follow my individual wacky adventure, you can find me at Optimus Chain on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. For everyone on the site, have a good night.